Porco Rosso in Italian translates to Crimson Pig. The movie's namesake is a jaded World War I Italian fighter ace turned pig who now hunts down air pirates for money in the Adriatic Sea in his extravagant, sleek red seaplane. This adventure tale by Studio Ghibli follows Marco Pige, known as Porco, as he navigates the dangers of combat with pirate gangs, rival pilots, and the Italian Air Force, all while dealing with love, grief, and self-fulfillment. Portrayed via heart-dropping vertical-filled dogfights and humorous yet sentimental dialogue with stunning landscapes as the backdrop, this movie is a character study of Marco, a man who finds himself no longer aligned with any power or ideology and instead lives comfortably on his own sense of morality and excitement. A man whose past torments him to a point where he is reduced to a lone pig that is ridiculed and hunted, yet strives to find pleasure and company in life. Porco Rosso, one of Ghibli's heavier movies, allows viewers to examine post-war survivors' guilt, isolation, and recovery vivaciously through Marco Pige. Let's begin by detailing Marco's backstory. Marco began flying airplanes at the age of 17 with his friend Gina as his only passenger. He grew up to become a fighter pilot in the First World War as part of the Italian Air Force, where he built up an impressive reputation as an ace for his performance and bravery. However, during one regular patrol, his plane became seriously damaged by the enemy to the point where he had to evade into the clouds. He did manage to escape, but returned without the comrades he started with. After the war, he became a pig, went by the pseudonym Porco, and lived in an inlet all by himself. He renounced his love for his country and began signing contracts with cruise liners to protect them from raids by the various air pirate gangs. Later on, in an incident where he found friendship with his mechanic friend's talented teenage daughter Theo, he regained hope in humanity and eventually himself. The political backdrop of this movie materializes Marco's aspirations, regrets, and struggles. Set in the early to mid-1900s, the events of the movie largely revolve around the First World War and its consequences. Presumably caught up in the rising nationalist movement, Marco was called to serve his country and fight the evil Axis forces, with the German and the Austro-Hungarian governments directly threatening his people. As a young man whose feet are barely wet in adulthood, it's easy to imagine why Marco dreams to fight in disguise. As an already talented and ambitious pilot, Marco would excel in aerial battles and win glory and everything more back on the grounds of Italy. But little did he know, he would come out of the war forever disillusioned and tormented. Things he tried not to think about would come back to haunt him time and time again. The weeps of the families of the fighters he has shot down, these fellow pilots just as fresh to life as he is. The emptier and emptier bunks around him in the barracks every night he returned from the skies. Theo sees a glimpse of his grief when he describes his dream of seeing a glistening white band up above, stretching all the way to the heavens. He realizes that the strip is comprised of all the pilots that had given up their lives during the war, and he could see thousands of them. The pilots continued to rise in the clouds below, and Marco saw his friend and comrade Bellini alongside of him, who had just gotten married 2 days ago. Marco had just patrolled with Bellini. He called out to Bellini and pleaded to exchange places with him, but to no avail. Captain Arthur Lee of the Royal Air Force, who served in World War I, documented these sentiments best. Those of us who were to pass safely through this strife and bloodshed will be affected by it all the rest of our lives. Marco laments the loss of those he had fought and those he had fought with, as he himself shot down their dreams and everything they had loved about life. He was unable to protect those of his fellow soldiers as well. He can no longer justify the killing, as the meaning of the war drastically deviates from what he had hoped for. The First World War's stipulations only bankrupted Italy and given rise to a fascist Italian regime. Guilt, bitterness, and shame weighed so heavily on his conscience that he lost all self-esteem. This manifested into his transformation as a pig. It is an insulting self-infliction, a product of being so repulsed that he reduces himself to a swine, a symbol of ignorance and greed. He takes up the habit of always wearing sunglasses, signifying his loss for dignity and inability to face the world. Afterward, he takes on the responsibility of being a flying bounty hunter and seek out fugitives, but denies any honor, and claims to only be doing it for money, since pigs don't care about honor. Deep down, however, he refuses to sway from his values and does not shoot to kill, only to disarm his targets and get the job done. He continues to find himself home in the skies, but remains restless due to the war's aftermath. However, Theo reintroduces hope and strength into Porco's life as a young, enthusiastic engineer. She is aware of the impact of war, yet maintains her passion and admiration for Porco. Much like him, who started flying at the age of 17, she also is following the footsteps of her grandfather Piccolo at that same age and aspires to be a world-class plane engineer. For him to achieve what he did simply by doing what he enjoyed gives her motivation to work hard and succeed as a woman in a male-dominated career field. Theo goes to the extent of pulling an all-nighter just to prove her abilities to him and gain his trust. And he eventually allows her to build a plane because he sees his own passion in her. Even when Porco is surrounded by the fascist secret police, she willingly accompanies him to help him daringly escape and make sure he flies comfortably in the plane that she had built, even after he ascertains his lack of worth as a man for his involvement in the war. Theo reassures that Porco is a great human and is happy that he's still alive. Porco is so convinced that those who had laid down their lives were better men than him, and that his survival indicated that he deserved to live alone in a special hell. But Theo proves him wrong by believing that he's still an honorable man, and his wounds do not define his value. We could see that Porco begins to see himself in a different light when he tells Theo,
"You're a great kid. You know what, Theo? Seeing you makes me wish I'd never given up being human. Now go to sleep."
Theo and the audience further gets a glimpse of this hopeful Porco as we see him in the flesh, the humanity within him for just a moment. Realizing how much he needs to feel helps him regain faith in himself and humanity as a whole. The war threw Porco into a spiral of despair because of the unfathomable destruction caused by mankind to one another. But for Theo to enter his life as a new beacon of hope in his darkness completely changed his outlook. Whereas he was a Byronic hero of the Asiatic who only looked out for himself, Porco now eases off on his individualistic instincts, exerting all his might to defeat arrogant Donald Curtis and make sure Theo does not have to live a miserable life with him. Porco departs from a sense of melancholia masked by cynicism as he is able to mourn his lost comrades and give meaning to their sacrifice by living to the fullest and brightening the lives of those around him. The reality of war is nothing short of brutal and unforgiving. For every 10 pilots who were able to see the skies during a war, only 3 were able to return. Now these are anything but great odds for any ambitious pilot, and even survival did not mean things were smooth sailing for those who came back. To witness comrades and enemies alike rain down from the skies in very chambers of metal makes one question not whether they'll endure the same fate, but when. It's this eternal flinching from it that's doing it, and has made a coward out of me. Few men live to know what real fear is. It's something that grows on you, day by day, that eats into your constitution and undermines your sanity. John Grider, of the United States Air Force. The story of Porco encaptured struggles of those who had already lived a daredevil's lifetime in the war, but it is also a story of optimism. Despite directly taking part in history's most tragic event within his own lifetime, Marco forgives himself for participating, but does not forget the significance and the legacy of those who were lost during that period. His most notable quote, "A pig who does not fly is simply a pig," is a testament to his strength and the empowerment of learning from the past to make a better future.